I do think it's time for us to really expose some smart sounding or intelligent sounding tethers from Africa as well as Caribbean, but we're going to focus on one particular video that I watched about a month ago between Dave Anderson and Frank Zunu. They was on the All in the Air or Daily Wrap Up Crew podcast. And this is somewhat of a reaction, but at the same time, this is going to be a little bit of commentary as well, because I really want to speak on this, because I think it's utterly important when a lot of foundational Black Americans speak with people from Black countries, sub-Saharan Africa, as well as the Caribbean, and they may sound intelligent, they may have a lot of facts, but the waters tend to get murky. Things tend to get very confusing because you may not know your own history. You may not know certain ingredients of the admixture of foundational Black Americans. So a lot of things can get lost in translation. So first and foremost, I'm going to provide a quick clip just as a teaser of how a lot of this may go, just in case you guys was wondering. Let's listen in on this very quickly here, because I think it's utterly important we cover things like this to teach our people, not only if you wanted to engage in debate and clap back, so to speak, but to understand that when people from these countries, whether it be the Caribbean, the UK, as well as Africa, how they may mix truth and lies together to confuse you of who you and what you really are.
About your ancestors that makes you proud to be Black. In 1991, there was a conference in France, right? At the end of the conference, the host, a Frenchman, decided to take 5 people to his house for dinner. And after dinner, he said, hey guys, what is it that makes you really proud that your ancestors left behind? That anywhere you go in the world, every corner of the world, you will see it. People have to rely on it every day. Say it without blaming anybody. Of course, the American kid was the first to say, well, listen, I'm a 23-year-old American kid. I didn't even finish high school. But you see, everywhere I go in this world with this blue passport, I'm treated like a rock star, because my ancestors built a country to represent or be the beacon of freedom and equality, and they mean it. America is a country where its soldiers have gone out to die for other people. Everybody thinks of America as the place to go if you want to just blow up. The Japanese said, well, I'm from Japan. There are 196 countries on earth, and in each of them, every 5 cars, 3 are Japanese. Every hospital in the world, the equipment that has saved lives were built in Japan. Appliances in the kitchen, on and on and on. It's the most beautiful, well-organized, hard-working culture in Asia. We're not just Asians. We are very one of a kind. And that, when I travel as a Japanese, the way people treat me is because of what my ancestors have built in this world. It's what they are robbing off me. Now, if you are, since you are Black, and you are the last person in the room, what would you say about your ancestors that in today's world, from 6 a.m. to 12 midnight, this is what your ancestors left behind, that everybody have to rely on it just to make the day go by? What is...
Now, throughout this whole video, he does a lot of tether babbling. He goes back and forth. He never really gets to a point. He never really gets to a foundation of an argument. He knows how to debate, but he deflects the entire time. So first and foremost, with that first clip, I wanted to set a premise of who and what this guy really is. Okay, because he's from Benin, and no smoke towards Benin people who are not tethers. But I wanted to point out how tethers from the continent, how tethers from the Caribbean, who may seem or speak intelligently, may come across foundational Black Americans. They say certain things. So basically, he's saying you are Black. What have your people contributed to America, to society, to the world as a whole? So, not to give you guys a history lesson, we know that the government is celebrating one of our great master teachers today, Dr. Martin Luther King, but his actual birthday is on January 15th, where we celebrated him for people who know the truth about him. I digress. But I want to show you this very quickly, and we're going to go down this whole list of the things that the world can't live without and have not been living without since foundational Black Americans have invented it. The three-light traffic light by Gerd Morgan. Automatic elevator doors by Alexander Miles. Home security system by our sister Marion Van Brayton Brown. The carbon light bulb filament that Lewis Latimer was on the team of Edison making the light bulb. The electric microphone with a lot of these YouTubers nowadays, ladies and gentlemen, as you see here, electric microphone. Without Foundational Black Americans, no one would be podcasting and social media with a microphone. Okay. Personal computer. We still have laptops, desktops. That's by our brother, Dr. Mark Dean, when he was working at IBM. Blood banks by Dr. Charles Drew saved a lot of people during the war, during many wars, rather. Peacemaker control unit by Otis Boykins. Refrigerator truck, Frederick McKinley Jones. I know you guys heard of him. And we also have some others like the modern dustpan. Not a huge invention, but nonetheless, we still use a dustpan if you sweep in your floors by Lord Ray. The improved ironing board by Sarah Boone. The lawn sprinkler by Joseph A. Smith, because people still to this day, you'll see them out in their front lawns spraying water all over their grass with their hand until they can afford or put in a sprinkler system. The street letter box. Now, before Philip B. Downing, people had to walk all the way to the post office to mail a letter. Now we have a whole system that was generated by a great invention of having a mailbox. The fire escape ladder by Joseph Winters, okay? The ice cream scoop, Alfred L. Krell. They used to take 2 small spoons and scoop ice cream. Now he made this really fortified, thick ice cream scooper that we use today. There's many iterations of it. Potato chips by George Crumb. You get crumbs from potato chips, okay? The Super Soaker by our great brother Lonnie Johnson, who worked at NASA, who was a spatial or aerospace engineer. The Pencil Sharpener by John Lee Love for the portable pencil, the portable pencil sharpener. The golf tee. Now, those are really small inventions. Like, what are we doing today? Well, just to name honorable mention, we have Moses West, who created the atmospheric water generator, the apparatus that creates water literally out of thin air. That's him right here dealing with his machine. The technology is a game changer for global water scarcity, okay? That's our great brother who have done that. So again, we have modernized the world in a lot of inventions. And believe me, that was only like 3% of the amount of inventions that we have created. So let me tell you what's crazy. We watch Foundational Black Americans, our ancestors, and even for us today, survive 400 years of institutional violence, rebuild a whole identity out of ash, invent half the planet's modern inventions, and still look you dead in your face. People from these other countries, tethers, okay, not the country themselves, tethers tell us that we do not have a culture. That's not the analysis. That's a permission slip, no less, because once you convince a people they have no culture, you can convince them that they have no claim. They have no lineage, no inheritance, no protection, no reparations, no political priority, just babble and struggle forever. Now, before we even get into this tether smoke that we're going to watch some clips from this video, this so-called Akata smoke, we got to answer one question. What is culture? Because depending on who defines it, some folks are able to get exposed. Now, you guys may have witnessed this video circling the internet from quite some time. It's been out roughly a month and some change, but we're going to do an analysis of it because I think it's utterly important that we speak about it, because we have a lot more tethers who may seem intelligent and well-informed on the top, but never really get to a defining moment of the common denominator of why Black folk around the world, let alone the reason why Foundational Black Americans are the way we are today. So let's get into it.
Problems, huh?
The first topic I want to get into is, how do you define culture? And under your definition, do Black Americans have a unique culture? Let me start here with Frank.
Well, I'm glad you used the word unique culture. So yes, I'm sure you all saw the episode, that got everybody on my on my case, except this gentleman was the only one brave enough to say, well, look, before I cut him into pieces, let me give him a chance to come into the studio and explain, to the audience.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. People say, oh, you're from Benin. And I'll say, yes. And they say, what's Benin culture like? And then I freeze, because there's nothing like a Benin culture.
All right, I want you guys to really dissect how he's going to explain this. But in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, he never gets to what Benin culture really is. He's basically going to say that there's the country, the Berlin Conference mixed a lot of these countries. They mix and match a lot of these countries. Not going to mention the Berlin Conference, but that's how Africa got divided, no less. But how a lot of these tribes got combined to make it one culture. Even with that, what is the culture? Let's see if he ever gets to the point.
Or if you're from Ghana, or if you're from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Liberia, there is no such thing. But if you say, oh, you are Yoruba, he said, yes. What is Yoruba culture like? Then he or she is able to start to talk about it. So there are similarities which I'm going to really explain, and you can see it. So I'm first going to ask. He's been on my show. He's seen my. I do not put together that show, which I fund from my own pocket because I just want to say things to make people angry. No, it's because I really care. And sometimes I get frustrated about what I have seen from the continent where I come from and what I see here about my great-great-great-grandfathers, uncles, sisters who were taken away. So African Americans would say, well, you're not one uncle. Yes, I know, but I'm walking past my cousin, my nieces every day. So what is in my head is what is in their head. And what I'm explaining is something that they must listen to when I say there is no such thing as African American culture. They're like, what do you mean? Well, culture for me is not dance, food, clothing. Those are not cultures. Culture is a worldview. The worldview is what drives people. Their relationship to wealth, to money, to community, to marriage, to family. It's the worldview they have. That's the foundation of a culture. And number two, there is no possibility for you to have a culture without having a language. So if you read most of the books written by brilliant African Americans, the first thing you see, the headline is, the traumatic thing about slavery is not merely changing your environment. The traumatic thing about slavery is not merely asking you to work long hours. The Russians have.
Now, before we go any further, just for context, ladies and gentlemen, let's really define culture as according to the script, according to the definition, the complex web of shared beliefs, values, customs, behaviors, and artifacts that characterize a group or society learned and passed down through generations, encompassing language. And Black Americans, we just don't speak English. Some people speak Gullah Geechee. Some people speak Creole. Some people speak foundational Black American Tut language, TUT language. So we have a different dialects of language within foundational Black American culture. Art, religion, social structures, and traditions that shape identity and social life from national cultures to subcultures, okay? That's just for context.
At hard labor camps in Siberia. Many countries, Japanese had it, where people work and they die. The traumatic thing about slavery is one thing only, which everyone has written about. They took our language away. They took our culture away. They took our history and religion away. That is a traumatic thing about being a slave. Now, if they took those things away, how and when were they recovered? So I met a gentleman. I was attending a conference in Singapore, and I met this gentleman who was a Korean sociologist. So we started talking during coffee, and I said, oh, I lived in Korea for 2 years when I was reporting. And I said, oh, wow. And then we started talking. I don't remember how the conversation came about when he asked me. He said, so your country was colonized? I said, yes, and my country, his country, Korea, was colonized by the Japanese for 49 years. And he said, what did you guys, meaning referring to people in Benin, what did you lose as a result of colonization? And I froze and I said, whoa, nobody has ever asked me that question. So I said, Prof, you tell me, and that will give me some idea. And he said, no, we're Koreans, we're colonized by the Japanese. So when they left, all we lost was time. We just went back being Koreans.
Well, I can help this brother out with their loss. They lost their minds. We understand that not all, but enough Africans on the continent, especially sub-Saharan Africans, have lost their minds through colonization, right? They have lost that fight. They have lost that warrior spirit that we haven't heard through Ogun. So when I look at videos like this and I look at people like him that speak seems to be on the surface very intelligently and well informed, but they never really give you an answer. They never really define the moment or define the term or define whatever the questioning may be. This is the definition of an intelligent sounding tether, because we may get lost in translation going back and forth about debating about who, what, where, why, and how. But when it comes to people like this, do not let people like him fool you of what is and what is not. That's the important point here.
And from that day, I could tell clearly, what did we lose as a result of colonization in Africa? What did you lose as a result of slavery? If you don't fix that which you lost, you're not going to make any way forward. So in Africa, the countries that exist today were never there. They forced a group of tribes that have their own distinct cultures to become a country. So they've lost their distinct cultures, trying to have a culture as a collective, which is never going to happen. So for me, first and foremost, when I talk about culture, I'm talking about a worldview, meaning the collective have to have one reason they are here on earth. And that thing is what drives them. It's what makes them wage wars, conquer people, anything. You ask anybody, in 1884, it was the Irish journalist who finally found a word to describe the English man, which he called the manifest destiny. That exceptionalism of the Englishmen, now you call them Americans. The American exceptionalism is the American culture, that they believe that God put them on this earth to colonize and civilize others. And that's what drives them to go out there and try to give freedom and fight for freedom and do all the things they do. Now, good or bad, I'm not giving any value. You ask the Japanese, he will tell you their worldview. So their dance and food, and no, those are not. I came from a place where, as a young boy, I was given a worldview, and it guided me everywhere I went. So when you meet me outside my culture, you can tell from my behavior, he must come from a culture that believes in XYZ. So a culture.
So I don't know if you guys are just as confused as I am, because he still has yet to explain, define, or give any reverence to Benet culture. This is not attacking Benet people, but this guy right here, Franck Zanu, because Frank came in philosophy first. He basically said culture isn't food, it isn't dance, it isn't clothing, even though you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people from the Caribbean and Africa telling us that culture is that very thing. And sometimes, and some of them may state that foundational Black Americans don't have these things, which we do. But no less, he said that it's not that. And again, this is his own definition, that culture is worldview. And you can't have culture without language, even though we have different dialects of language. We've actually, because of the transformation and ethnogenesis of Black Americans, have created languages like the foundational Black American Tut language, like the African American English version language. And I'm not going to even speak about Ebonics. This is kind of broken English to a sense, more like a slang for people. But no less, slavery took language, it took history, it took religion. So how do you recover it? Now, let me be fair about this, because he's right about one thing. Slavery did not just steal labor. It tried to steal identity. So the suppression of African languages and cultural continuity is documented across the Americas. Language loss is one of the most devastating forms of cultural disruption. And that's not a debate, that's history. But here's where it gets slippery for me, because the lead from they try to destroy your culture to you have no culture is like saying they burned your house down, therefore you never had a home. No, that's not how we get down. That's not scholarship. That's disrespect with a bibliography culture that can be damaged. He's all over the mess. This is Tether Bible at the highest level. At the highest level. So he's very confusing. He's all over the board, and people are giving credit not to this particular video, but a lot of pieces he has done. And here's the part that really people hate admitting the most. FBA culture is literally a case study in cultural survival under terror. This is not culturalist. This is culture forged under pressure. So our culture is this not the inventions that modernize the world that we live in today? Is this not our struggle? Is this not our pain? It's the things that we still do today, even under a certain level of oppression and systemic issue. So again, we're going to comb through this interview, and I just want to give a shout out to this video by the Daily Wrap-Up crew. Very powerful interview with this guy, and Dave Anderson will start handing out these receipts that I think you guys will be very interesting in hearing. Okay, let's go to the next clip.
Came from a place where, as a young boy, I was given a worldview, and it guided me everywhere I went. So when you meet me outside my culture, you can tell from my behavior, he must come from a culture that believes in XYZ. So a culture becomes more pronounced when you are outside the group. As an individual, outside your group, people must be able to tell.
Okay. Dave, what is your rebuttal to that?
It's not so much a rebuttal, it's a difference in philosophy, right? It is, and I think we got to thank Frank for even coming here, because I know for some people this would be very adversarial. Frank and I, we talk all the time. We're very, very good folk. And there's a couple of things that I got to push back on simply because they were not available to us. See, when Frank was born, he inherited a culture. We had to make one with what we had. Some of us, if I were to swab any one of you, you would find some Nigerian, you would find some Ghanaian. Like, we had to hodgepodge, not to mention out of all of the places that Black people were forced into when we were slaves, 3% came to what we now consider the United States of America. And then we were bred over time. We were buck broken over time. They would take our women and grape them out of respect for your channel. You know what I'm saying? Drop the G. And then on top of that, they had a split breast system. And the split breast system means that one breast would feed the white children of the slave master, and the other one would feed the Black children that were going to be bought off and sold. We also have a situation where we had to face things that no other Black person on the continent had to face. You know, taking our children and feeding them to alligators, lynching, Jim Crow, all of those things. And when you look at it, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, the pulse of America runs through foundational Black Americans. Who was the first person to die in the Revolutionary War? Crispus Attucks, Black man, foundational Black American, right? Harriet Tubman made the Underground Railroad and stopped it in Philadelphia. There are all of these things that have happened that make it who we are. Now, as a person who was the first Black youth president of an organization called the National Conference of Christians and Jews, to Frank's point, I do agree, you don't really see your culture until you're out of it. So I'm a raisin and buttermilk in a conversation where there's a bunch of white Christians and a bunch of Jewish people, and they're like, hey, we do this. I'm like, no, Black people don't do that. You know what I'm saying? From the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we eat, the way we move. Not to mention, you can't go anywhere on this earth without seeing our influence. The problem is, unlike any other Black culture on the face of the planet, we have been colonized and monetized for profit by everyone, including the Koreans. K-pop ain't nothing but R&B. Let's call it what it is. And it's R&B under duress, because if you look at what happened with Megan Thee Stallion when she was dealing with those K-pop girls, she was like, oh, it's serious up in here. Because if they miss a step, they get what Joe Jackson gave Mike and them, but worse. There are all of these things that take place that no one wants to talk about. So no, we don't have a language because we weren't allowed to speak our language under penalty of death. When you talk about you can't come to the cookout and things of that nature, people forget. Picnic is an abbreviated slang term, which means you get to pick to lynch. Postcards came from pictures that they used to take the back of and mail for people who couldn't see the lynching that they had. All of these things we survived. And the funny thing is, everyone's coming over here and benefiting from the fact that we put out the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. All of those things that started as the Black liberation movement, but then got shoehorned into civil rights because everybody wants to come off of our pain. It's still a part of who we are. American culture.
Now, this is the part we had to make. One American runs through our pain. Media monetizes our pain. We don't control distribution of our pain. Now, this is where Dave did what needed to be done. He said that Frank inherited a culture. FBA had to build one. The U.S. pulse runs through foundational Black American history. What gets broadcast isn't our reality. It's a distorted, monetized caricature of our reality. We don't control major media distribution, so the official story of FBA get outsourced. And I'm going to say it plain for people in the back. This is not emotional. This is what we call the infrastructure of America. Culture isn't just what you do, it's what you reproduce across generations, whether it be values, survival strategies, humor, language patterns, family systems, church traditions, political behavior, music forms, cuisine under constraint, social codes under surveillance. You know what that sounds like? Sounds like a culture to me. So again, I have no idea what Franck Zanu is referring to and or talking about.
Culture is Black culture. The problem is, not only did we have to create it, but everybody else got to monetize it. We don't own major forms of media. So the message that goes out to the world about foundational Black Americans is very lopsided. It's very negative. Even Frank said to Nancy, he said, well, what is your culture? Twerking? Negating the fact that twerking started in Africa. Mating rituals, things of that nature, tying of the hip, stop me when I go wrong. All of these things get put out as if that's who we are. And it's a very limited, very narrow-minded, very sore and very disingenuous snapshot of who we are, because we get put into killers, baby mamas, this and that and the other. And then when you look at how the media is weaponized, right? They'll take people throughout the diaspora and then put them on platforms and then bring them here. I'll give you an example. There's a show on CBS called Bob Hart's Abishola. And she said things that were much more incendiary than what Frank said. You know, oh, what is it? Gangbangers and baby mamas?
Crazy.
No.
I want you guys to think about culture as it relates to the American language, because if anybody really wants to test this, you tell a Jamaican who's not been in America for a very long time, you tell a Nigerian who just came over here, and you tell a Black Chicagoan to interpret this particular phrase, man, I'm finna slide. That's culture taken. They're not going to know what that means. So even with the American language, we have created our own culture. We are a subculture of America. So you can't have culture without language. Now, to me, that sounds deep, but it's too absolute in my opinion, because anthropology and social linguists would tell you language is a major vessel of culture. But cultures also persist through rituals, memory, institution, norms, kinships, patterns, religion, and shared historical experience. So FBA does have language patterns. As I told you before, we have the African American English, okay, which is a recognized studied dialect system with consistent grammar rules. Aratasase means a rise in the traditional foundational Black American Tut language. We have Gullah Geechee, is a Creole language that has been preserved West African linguistic features and cultural continuity in the Low Country, so to speak. So if somebody says no language, what they often mean, in my opinion, is no African nation state language, no Swahili, something on those regards. And that's true because slavery severed specific ethnic continuity, but FBAs didn't become culturalists. We became a new people with a new ethnogenesis built in the U.S. under force. That's why the claim no culture is a foul talking point, in my opinion. It frames survival as emptiness. No, we have survived more so than any other so-called I'm not going to even go there.
That energy is designed to keep us a certain way. And then when you talk about how the entertainment is weaponized, because that's the message, that's our largest export. It always has been. Our talent and our ability to entertain, but not capitalize on said entertainment. You can't point to one major Black-owned record company. You can't point to one major Black-owned media outlet. You can't point to one major media or technological distribution center that is controlled, owned, and managed by foundational Black Americans. And so the message of foundational Black Americans that gets out is not our message, and I completely reject that. If that's what you think the culture is, I am here to tell you that ain't my culture. It ain't.
Absolutely. Now, Dave Anderson is a powerful brother. I like what he's doing in this interview. I just want to give props out to him as well as the Daily Wrap-Up crew, because we're just doing a reaction and a little bit of commentary as we're coming through this interview. And this is more so to have people to understand how people come from these other countries. Now, he's from Benin or Beni, however you pronounce it, not to disrespect, that particular country, but you have a lot of tethers that come from these countries that may seem or even sound intelligent because of some of the things they say, but they really have no historical references, no information, no dialect in regards to our struggle and what our people have been through, let alone they come over here. And by the way, he became an American citizen. That's Franck Zanu. And he stated that he don't even want to return back to his country. So this is how we get disrespected. And by the way, he still haven't explained what is Benin culture. What is that? What is the food? What is the dance? Oh, it's about the worldview. Then what is the worldview of the culture that you are representing? That's what I like to know. Let's go to the next clip.
Once upon a time, John Lennon sang a song. Imagine we don't have religion. Imagine a world without religion, without heaven and hell. He believed in what? The brotherhood of mankind. Sure. So imagine the people without a culture. Maybe they are striving to a brotherhood of mankind. So you take words out of context, and then you crucify a man, right? Not knowing that I am a victim of a cultureless country.
That's sometimes the risk.
I think we get angry too quickly. We're too sensitive. I was giving a live talk the other day, and a gentleman, not the way David is behaving, he wrote the book and he said, "My brother Frank." He doesn't know what this means to me. He called me on the phone and spoke with me. And we became friends, like on the phone. And I said, I got to go. Even if it's 3 hours drive, if I have to fly, I'm going to see this gentleman. Because more than this conversation, there is someone here who really is a thinker. But we got to begin to tame down and accept criticism, because that is the only way societies were built in this world. In my live talk, I told this gentleman when he wouldn't get off my case, and I said, let me tell you something. You don't hate the white man. You don't even fear them. Because if Black people hate and fear the white man the way they hate and fear each other, you would all have left this country at the end of slavery.
Left this country and go where?
Go where?
Yeah.
Where did the Jews go to? You know how many lands in Africa was offered to African Americans through the Black Star Line project? It was funded by a British through Marcus Garvey and Kwame Nkrumah, the Black Star Line. Did you go? No. How did you get?
The brother asked them, where should we go? He said, where did the Jews go? Where the United Nations did a partition plan to give part of Palestine to what we now know as Israel today. So that's where the Jews went. They actually was given land, and they have expanded their empire within that region. So this is why I really wanted to dissect this, because you're going to see a lot of things being said, and there's no contextualizing what he's stating. He'll just mention something and then move on to the next point. So that's why I'm stating that on the surface, it may seem, because he has some relevant points, but there's no teeth. There's no defining moment of him explaining it to a point where you can regurgitate it and truly understand it and comprehend it. You just can't, because again, this is at the highest form of Tether Bible.
Get the Amerigo-Liberia culture moved back. 3,400 people only agreed to go to Liberia. What do you mean, where to? Plenty of land everywhere. Where did you come back from? How about the Caribbean?
See, that in and of itself.
But I'm not saying it.
No.
I said.
Hold on, Frank.
I'm not.
Let me get the day real quick.
No. See, the thing of it is, and you gotta understand, right? Like my favorite verse in the Bible is Proverbs 4:7. It says, "In all thy getting, get an understanding." You gotta understand Frank's perspective. In his mind, it's like, well, shoot, why didn't you go? To me, that's no different than when Kanye sat in front of Harvey Levin and the light skin boy, never call his name.
Now, I'm gonna be really quick before he breaks this down because he's gonna make some very powerful points. This "you should have left" angle pops up every few months like a sensational flu. If you guys notice, I'm kind of struggling with something. I'm getting a bug or something, but we're gonna still rock. But history says there's multiple immigration movements and debates, and Liberian migration efforts in the 1800s, whether it be complex, contested, and not easily really to return, because in the Marcus Garvey era promoted Black self-determination and global enterprise like the Black Star Line, which ultimately failed financially and politically, but mattered historically to a particular point. And even if leaving was possible, why is the burden always on the oppressed to flee when we have literally built the foundation of America instead of the oppressor to stop oppressing us? Also, when I look at a lot of FBA, when we look at things very logically, it's very simple in my opinion. We built this country with blood. We're not running from what we built. We're collecting what we're owed. That's not confusion. That's ownership. So I'm gonna let our brother Dave Anderson to break it down even more so.
Said, well, shoot, for 400 years, that's slavery. It sounds like a choice. Like, no, it's not just that, right? It's bigger than that, because what no one talks about is the psyop that was done to us from 1619 through 1865, and then after 1865 all the way through, right? So if you have been told over and over and over and over and over again that you're less than, that you ain't nothing, that you don't even get the right to call yourself a name, there are certain things that get lost in translation because he does not carry that particular experience. He's got his own experiences, and one of the things that I love, and I encourage absolutely everybody to go to this man's YouTube channel, because when he talks about Black on Black crime, he does not start and stop the conversation at foundational Black Americans. He talks about what's happening in Nigeria. He talks about what's happening in Liberia. He talks about what's happening in Ghana. And that is something that's happened throughout the diaspora. And the one thing we all have in common is...
Now, this is probably the only point I disagree with Dave Anderson. You should not go to his YouTube channel unless you're just going to hate watch, because it's funny to me that all these people will talk about Black on Black crime, and maybe some defining reason why Black on Black crime exists, where you go to Asia, you have Asian on Asian crime, you have white on white crime. Even in America, you have these particular crimes. But see, we are a subset of the American culture. We're only, 48 million? And you go to these other countries when they say how bad Black American culture is and that we're living in hoods and ghettos and we're doing this, that, and the other. Have you guys been to Nigeria? Have you guys been to Benin? Have you guys been to all these other African countries? Unfortunately, we're talking about over 80% of the country lives below the poverty line. And believe me, poverty in America is way different than poverty in Africa. Now, poverty in America is like a mansion that you're living in poverty in Africa. And I'm not trying to make jokes about it. The reality is that, because I've been to Ghana, I've been to South Africa, I've been to Kenya. So again, I've seen the difference between West Africa, South Africa, and East Africa. And believe me, poverty is poverty in Africa. And whether it be shanty towns, people living in sheet metal homes, very, very different than in America. Okay. So again, I would rather live in the worst hood in America than live in any shanty town in Africa. That's just the reality of it. And I'm not trying to denigrate it. That's just the reality of it all.
Is that we were colonized and psyoped, but none more brutally than us. So if you think, for example, there have been writings from Frederick Douglass, there were writings from Harriet Tubman, there have been plenty of people who have talked about how many people did not want to leave the plantation because it was all they knew and they were scared, almost to a point where they had Stockholm syndrome. The idea of going back to a place they'd never been or had any historical reference to because it had been beaten, threatened, hung, stabbed, lynched out of them. Yeah. No, I ain't going back there. Why would I? Now, me personally, I know plenty of people who have repatriated, right? And I know plenty of people who love it. I know plenty of people who get called all types of Akatas and every daggone thing else over there. I also understand that there's a caste system over there. There are people, there have been times when I have been called over there mixed because of the texture of my hair or the fairness of my skin or the narrowness of my nose. Because whether we like to admit it or not, when it comes to a foundational Black American line, you can always find, if you go up farther enough, somebody who played master got loose in the slave quarters, right? Or as they like to say, Black Buck got loose in the big house, but it wasn't us getting loose in the big house. You understand what I'm saying? So there's all these things. And to the John Lennon point, that's ironic, and I will tell you why. John Lennon was a part of the Beatles. The Beatles invasion came about because the Beatles were the very first Backstreet Boys. The Beatles were doing what Ike Turner was doing, what Jimi Hendrix was doing, what Little Richard was doing, what all these foundational Black Americans were doing, but because they were palatable. And they told you themselves that they were singing Black music no different than Elvis. So yeah, it's real easy to say, imagine when you're a European, rich, white man with an Asian wife who has more money than he knows what to do with, who had the unmitigated gall to say he was bigger than Christ himself and not get canceled. Yeah.
This brother speaking straight facts. Now, if you're new to Blacklogic, go and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. I don't do too many reaction videos because I don't really like taking from a lot of other videos. But again, there's a lot of powerful interviews out there that I've been watching that I may do some quick reaction to. This probably be one of the longest, no less. I love to come up with my own scripts and my own context because, again, I think it's relevant that you listen to people who are not just giving you factual information and data points, but will really get into not only the emotions that's tied to a lot of things that we've been through, but the progression of foundational Black Americans beyond Jim Crow, beyond slavery. But you still need to have a foundation of what did happen and why it happened. Because a lot of people think, oh, the reason why slavery happened to Black people is because white people hate Black people. No, it was founded on economics. And that's why America, I mean, is slowly dissipating, no less. That's why America is still one of the richest countries in the world, because they had hundreds of years of free labor, okay? And this country was built on the backs of Black people, okay? Foundational Black Americans. So I think that's imperative to note. Again, to have that stance so it can be accentuated through not only your kids and not teaching kids just about slavery, just about Jim Crow and redlining and voter suppression. Again, the history is there. But how do we springboard our next generation to be more successful than us, even with systemic issues, even under a certain level of oppression? Whether some people agree with that or not. Oh, well, there's some Black people that's doing better than, so what's their excuse? And I would like to follow the money, follow the trace of how some people are doing well and how did they get to the point where they are now, especially in a country as diverse as America, where people from other countries, whether they look like us or not, are still put on a pedestal above us in the incentives. Because I've said this many times, all the incentives and social benefits that immigrants come over, from all these different countries, who is most likely in the top 10% of their own country. Because again, you can come over here, you can say denigrating, disrespectful things to foundational Black Americans. But when I go to some of these other countries, would you believe that Japan has slums where people are living in squalor? People, are homeless. Yes, they have it. But that's not going to be in Tokyo. That's not going to be in Kyoto. That's not going to be in all these different Japanese cities. They hide their poor. They hide their disenfranchised. They hide these things. When I lived in Korea for 4 years, they hide them. You'll see onesies and twosies throughout the subway system, but there's certain areas where there's a very large demographic of people that are not doing so well. They make sure that media doesn't go in there. And if you do go in there, you will have to hide your cameras because they don't want to show the world their poverty. So again, people come to America where we don't have another country. This is our country. This is our country. But see, the top 10% of their country come to America, open up businesses, and they act as if they don't receive incentives from the American government. Right now, President Trump is really basically trying to incentivize Greenlanders to purchase or to take ownership of Greenland because of, as he stated, the strategic value militarily between China and Russia, number one. And number two, the amount of minerals and resources Greenland had. But they've been protesting in Copenhagen and Denmark, and they have been protesting in Greenland at the American embassy, stating that they do not want to become Americans. Okay, now there's a small subset of Greenlanders that say, yeah, I love the $100,000 to become American. I'm not going to move it to America. I'm going to stay right here in Greenland. But again, they're showing that a lot of Greenlanders, as well as people in Denmark that are supporting the Greenlanders, do not want to become American. But no less, President Trump, which is 50, okay, so Greenland is the largest island in the world. There's 57,000 people that live in Greenland. And if he were to give each Greenlander 100,000 USD, that would cost the American government, I think, roughly $5 billion. I may be off a couple of dollars here and there, but I think it's $5 billion. Foundational Black Americans have not even been offered that. But there's this large discrepancy of wealth between blacks and whites. And people say, why? Again, the same narrative and same tropes and same stereotypes are repeated like they're in this looping pattern because you're lazy, because you're not that intelligent, because your frontal lobe is still not well developed. We get all these excuses. I digress.
Ancestors come from. Can't tell you the boat though.
I want to ask, like, so where did you get your definition of culture?
Well, my background is mass comm journalism.
Mhm.
And if you do advanced mass comm journalism, of course, you're going to do multicultural understanding.
Mhm.
And in the study of multicultural differences in understanding, of course, you study how languages were developed, what it meant for people, and so on and so forth. And it's the first thing that allows you to understand how to interact when you move from one place to go to another place.
Mhm.
So through that, and then of course, my column for 13 years was life and culture. I didn't report on politics, economics, or wars. I reported on life and culture.
Right.
It allowed me to study, and I realized, how would I know? I began to compare it, okay, to where I'm coming from. And I said, something went wrong. I would give me just a little bit to explain something. You know where my interest as a black man became piqued after traveling the world, when I began to hear the slogans we create, the narratives we create. Okay, I was speaking in Kenya on a university campus. One young man got up and told me how I missed the point about why Kenya is the way it is, and blamed the white man who came to take their culture and stop them from speaking their local languages and gave us Christianity. Oh, he went down the laundry list of things that happened to them, and it's still happening. So I said, wow, you are a brilliant man. I've never met anyone who have made this list, but I have only one question. Why did it work? And that is what we refuse to ask ourselves. So we always say,
no, we don't refuse to ask ourselves that question. Why did it work? Because of survival. Because we were trying to avoid total annihilation. It doesn't matter if it was foundational Black Americans in America or Kenyans in Kenya or people around the African diaspora, whether it be in the Caribbean or the African continent. It's because of survival. We were trying to survive. When the colonizers came, they came with advanced weaponry. And we saw how easily they can kill people from a distance, further than a spear, further than a machete, or whatever it may be, further than an arrow. So again, he asked these questions, and shout out goes again to the Daily Wrap-Up crew. They really didn't have any defense mechanism to some of the things he was stating. But again, our brother Dave Smith did some straightening on this. I do appreciate that. But again, some of these questions like, oh, why did we allow this to happen? Because of total annihilation and destruction. That's why.
Say that they did this to us. They did this to us. But we never ask ourselves, why did it work? See, I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to many cities in the United States. I've lived in the UK. I've seen blacks in the UK. I've seen black in China. I've seen blacks in almost every corner of the world. And I've seen blacks in the America and on the continent. And everything we are describing is uniform about us. You really think that the largest number of people on earth in terms of countries, 54 in one continent, about 10 or 13 in the Caribbean, black groups in the UK, in China, in America. And we are all suffering that psychological warfare and responding to it for years. Nothing in the world, use any probability, has ever touched a coin and it fell on its head 9 times out of 10. Impossible. We need to re-examine us as black people. What is it? And it's nothing we are saying. Because if it is true, then there's something really wrong first with us. Let me tell you something.
Now, fam, you guys can chime in the chat. I'm so confused of what the hell he's talking about. Because there have been buffer groups set in place that thought they were better than black people worldwide. This has happened in each and every country that has been colonized. India has been colonized for 90 years by the British. There has been all these particular countries that a lot of you guys may not be aware of that have been colonized either by the Portuguese, by Belgium, by Germany, by Great Britain, by France, by Spain, by Italy. The list goes on and on and on. And the one thing they made sure is to make a class to divide people, right? So in South Africa, they have what? Coloreds, which is a mixture of black and white people, right? Then you have the blacks, then you have whites, so on and so forth. Now, I might get some things wrong here and there, but you guys get my drift. They have white Hispanics that come over and look down on black people, and some of them even look down on brown Hispanics. So again, everywhere they went, they made these buffer groups. Just as well in Asia. Do you know they have brown-skinned Asians? Remember the Mongols, the Mongolian people? They had a darker tone to their skin. With the Cantonese people, they speak Cantonese. They have a darker skin in Asia, and they're frowned upon from people who are of lighter skin. They have created a color caste system. But again, he's been all around the world teaching and preaching, really astute, very intelligent, but he never defines the term. He never tells you the common denominator of why. He just continues to ask why while slightly denigrating his point. It makes no sense to me. And I would have called him out on this. I definitely would have.
Korea, nobody. It's a miracle that Korea is what it is today. It is the only country in the world, or in Asia, let me just be, that has never waged war. They call them Pakachon, inferior, by the Japanese, but Mongolians, Chinese. They were bullied and they were invaded, colonized, tortured for hundreds of years. Why didn't it work on them? The Jews went into slavery, the globe, 4,000 years in the diaspora. In Egypt, in Baghdad, which was formerly Babylon. When they were in Europe, what was the name the Aryan race through the Nazi organization said they were? Jews are inferior. It's what they said over and again to German kids. When they arrived in America, Sammy Davis had a joke. He said he was getting on the bus in Montgomery. The driver told him to get to the back of the bus. He said, "No, you don't understand. I'm a Jew." He said, "Oh, get off the bus then." In 1977, a black man bought a home in Westport, Connecticut before a Jew. Jews were not allowed to rent or buy a home in Greenwich, in Westport, in Darien. There's a story Donald Trump had to.
Has he ever thought about the reason for that is because they stated that they were a Jew? Now, granted, Jews come in all shades, colors, and races, but the Jews he referring to, from what I gather, are white Jews. Now, a Jewish person doesn't have to wear the traditional religious cap that they wear. I don't know the right terminology for it, and the way they do their hair and some of the garbs that they wear. They can look like a Dave Smith. Okay, remember he was speaking with Nick Fuentes. If he didn't tell you he was Jewish, you wouldn't know he was Jewish. There's a lot of Jewish people who do not wear the traditional clothing, have the traditional cap. They don't do none of those things, but they will still state that they're Jewish. They can blend in, and people will say, well, Jewish are not white. Well, I mostly hear that from Jewish people, and I'm like, well, where does your family come from? If I were to do a DNA test, compare you from a person in Eastern Europe, whether it be Russia, Belarus, Poland, a lot of those Eastern European countries, would it come back the same? 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, it would. So again, no context, just speaking, Tether Bible.
To build the first golf course when he became aware that Jews and blacks were not allowed to play in golf courses. Jews had it tough in this country through redlining, where they were not allowed to set up businesses, so they were forced to convert and start loaning to themselves from within. It didn't happen to them for 1,000 years, longer than we were enslaved or colonization. So the question you need to ask is, if they did all these things against us, why did it work? Let me give you one thing to the response I said earlier, why African Americans didn't leave after slavery. Not because there was no place to go to. That is completely a lie. Ask yourself, the Ashantis knew that they were the most powerful tribe in Ghana, followed by the Airways, the Gans, the Chuis, Akwamus, everybody. They knew that they didn't form the country Ghana, that they were forced, okay? But it came to an end. For Ghana, 1957. Why didn't they go back to become the individual tribes they were? Was there anybody there telling them you can't? No. Do you know why they stayed as a country?
Why?
They were attracted by the bling the colonial left behind. The roads, the hospitals, the schools, the post office, the fire department, the buses with air conditioning from London imported to their country, the railway lines, all the beautiful things. Why didn't you live here? It's not because you don't know where to go. It's because you didn't hate the white man and you weren't afraid of him.
I think you're eliminating the fact that we built blood, sweat, tears, deaths, you know, so much. We are the biggest innovators. We built America. Why give up everything we built? America wouldn't exist off the pains and struggles of Black Americans. You don't just give that up. With asking your question, we do also ask, why didn't Africans or other Caribbean people or other nations join us and make us a bigger nation in America? We built it. Everything came off our death. And every time we created something big, it was destroyed, burned down.
Like where?
What are you talking about?
Oh,
No,
wait. I got this one. Don't worry. Wilmington, North Carolina, Eatonville, Rosewood, Tulsa, Philadelphia, Chester, Pennsylvania, Wilmington, North Carolina,
Blacklogic,
South Carolina,
in Jersey.
Yeah, you know, there were plenty of places. Anytime we had any infrastructure, two things happened. They decided to integrate it. Look at have you been to Central Park? You know what Central Park is, right?
It's a park.
No, it's not. Central Park was actually a place called Seneca Village. It was when freed Black people decided to converge in one area, and they decided to redistrict that area, even though they owned the land and the houses that they built free and clear, and they destroyed those people, displaced those people, and built a park around it. There's an old song Joni Mitchell said, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone." They paved paradise and put up a parking lot. They paved paradise and put up Seneca Village. In Georgia, just outside of Atlanta, there's a place called Lake Lanier. It used to be a thriving Black town. They decided to kill the Black folks, get rid of the ones they couldn't kill, and then people right now are boating on it every weekend. That's what happened to us. That's what got destroyed. And it doesn't mean that we don't keep building, but after a while, even if you look at the flea experiment, are you familiar with the flea experiment?
The what?
The flea experiment.
No.
So the flea experiment goes like this. You take a bunch of fleas, you put them in a jar, you put the top on the jar, and you put holes in the top of the jar. After a while, the fleas will stop at the top of the jar because they get tired of smacking up against the top of the jar. Now, because you have conditioned the fleas that they're not going to go above the top of the jar, you take the top of the jar off and you never have to worry about them jumping out of the jar because they don't think there's anything above the jar. So if you have been killed, bombed, drowned, thrown out, redistrict, redlined.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are historical facts. I got time. We can Google it.
Sure,
But that's that's the part.
I'm no expert
No,
on all the things he has listed.
I'm just saying we shouldn't just talk about leaving.
I will
and we
respond.
built that.
Yes, I will respond to you. I'm no expert on all the things he has listed. I might have read about them, but you see, every time I read something or I encounter a story, my mind works in that way because I'm an critical thinker. All right. I have also known societies in the world that once upon a time were prevented to do anything. They were prevented.
So now he wants to play stupid. Now, today's point about destruction is real historically because Seneca Valley was a predominantly Black community displaced for the creation of Central Park through eminent domain in the 1850s. I think he's going to cover that unless there's something we missed because we had a malfunction here, guys, in case you guys just tuning in. But again, he never really speaks to the point. If he acts dumb, like he doesn't know, but then speaks as if he does know. Again, this very confusing tether battle is the way that people would like to trip up Foundation Black Americans in having a lot of these debates. But when we have people as powerful as a Dave Anderson there giving them that work, I do appreciate this guy's scholarship.
To do it. Like the Jews is an example of it. Indians were an example for 81 years by the British. They couldn't build, innovate, do anything. They have to rely on the white people, right? And you can go down Koreans the same way. However, I believe in something called the second advantage, meaning when the phenomena is over, you should repeat it. So somebody gave me the first lecture about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I said, "What year was that?" Quite a long time ago, right? Okay. At one time in this country, you and we will not have an opportunity to do certain things. But if that ability to build Black Wall Street is innate, why haven't we repeated it?
Because we cannot. And here's
now let's go to your flea experiment.
Sure.
How about the other people who've been held down also by the same condition for long? Why are they not? Here is my problem. I have a lot of mentees. African American students whom I used to take to Africa. I had a program every year. I take a bunch of.
If any of you guys that are Black American, Foundation Black American in this class, please never ever listen to this guy or attend his class ever again. He's going to tether confuse the hell out of you because he doesn't know what he's thinking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't even know what he's referencing. He's just talking.
Of them to build schools in Benin.
A lot of that money out of his own pocket, by the way.
Yes.
Credit where credit is due.
Now, I really get the goose on my skin when we keep repeating the very thing that is building prisons around us. One is that we've been psyched up, so we can't do anything. Two is somebody is always lurching in the dark. That's why we are the way we are. If you say so, and then you ask a kid to go to school and stay in school and do well, you sound stupid. Why don't you go and kill the white supremacist so the problem will go away from me? There is something that is just human. When you find yourself in a certain situation, you cannot explain it, better create a boogeyman fast. But a boogeyman only turns around and imprison you and your own children. I refuse. There is no psychological effect on any Black person on earth. We are just what we are, different. And whenever we find ourselves among other people, the first thing we start doing is compare.
Black people fought for civil rights. You are here because of civil rights.
What is civil rights?
That's a great question, and it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
The right to be able to participate in what the Constitution of the United States provides for everybody. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense.
I spared that up because we're kind of falling behind because of the malfunction we had. But just kind of recap on that last bit, because again, he was getting into a lot of tether babble, and we're moving to a different point here. But if we look at a lot of the records, it often show that certain things were built too effectively. The system responded when Black Americans built all these different Wall Streets. And I'll just give you some context here. You guys can reference this article by The Root called The Other Black Wall Streets, because it seemed as though that nobody really understand there was more than Tulsa, Oklahoma. Because again, if you're going to have talking points, or you're going to have reference points, then you really need to have more meat than potatoes when it comes to this. So again, I'm not going to run through this, but we had not only Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the Greenwood area, we have North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina to be exact. And if you scroll throughout this entire article, it will give you the other Black Wall Streets that we have, Harlem of the South. So again, we had much more than just one Black Wall Street where Black people were doing.
Fought for civil rights. You are here because of civil rights.
What is civil rights?
Okay.
That's a great question, and it depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
The right to be able to participate in what the Constitution of the United States provides for everybody. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare. I mean, it's a long Constitution, but in there's a lot of amendments in the 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Yeah, so the civil rights simply says that people living here, African Americans who were brought here illegally and forcefully, must have the freedom to participate in everything civic.
Not everybody. You see, that's the distinction that they don't tell you. It's not just about African Americans. They shoehorned absolutely everybody else
African
into it.
Americans who enacted the civil rights were thinking about other people.
No, we weren't, but that's what the government did with it. That's what I'm trying to get. It's not about whether you were extended.
And in this particular point is that he failed to mention that all the things that occurred during the destruction of these Black Wall Streets, right? You're talking about displacement, redlining, racial programs, legal sabotage, violence at the highest level, or integration that conveniently transfer ownership away from Black Americans. Look at Black American communities now. There's a reason why we don't own what we used to own, where we used to have candy shops and corner stores. Now there's nothing but people from other nations that are owning a lot of the establishments that we had in our own neighborhoods. This wasn't by us destroying ourselves. This was by the system destroying us. This was by design.
Sending an invitation or not.
Make it. You are trying to make it more emotional.
If I buy you a ticket to the Yankees game, you didn't buy the ticket or you didn't ask to go to the Yankees game, but you're sitting in the stands.
It's saying you still benefit.
You still benefit from it.
Whether I did it, I don't believe it, and therefore
whether you believe it or not, I don't believe that's a camera. It doesn't stop it from recording.
I also showed you that other countries, 196 countries on the surface of the earth. Out of that, 46 or 48 of them are white countries. You go to any of them, you find us. We didn't wait to see, Black people are here waving flags and saying, now you can come.
Why the fuck y'all wasn't here when we was out here getting our ass whipped and hung?
Okay, I don't want to talk about the conditions people face and what they fought for. It's one thing, I respect it.
It don't sound like
acknowledge it.
But now you're because you're benefiting from it.
You wouldn't be able to walk these grounds.
The rights you have as a Black man, regardless of where you come from in America, you are an American citizen, right?
Yes.
You are a American citizen.
Naturalized American.
You're a naturalized American citizen. 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Like that, you became a naturalized citizen because that amendment was fought for by us. So you benefit.
The Southeast Asians who are here.
Same. Yes. The South Asians, the Germans.
Everybody.
Yes, everybody.
Then I don't have anything to say about that.
Because
I'm not a scholar on why white American government decided to allow immigration. To build
because it was of a financial benefit. It was of a financial benefit.
Of course, that is one of the things that is so unique from other countries. They knew the line they have taken and the country they want to build. Of course, every country on the surface of the earth builds into its system a form of immigration. Even the most homogeneous, like Japan, they always know what immigration does to a country. And so if you're going to go on telling everybody who is here it's because of us, then fine, I wouldn't argue at that. You did.
I mean, my whole thing is
everybody. Then I think
but the thing of it is, it's a historical fact that whether you recognize it or not, there is a debt of gratitude to be paid to foundational Black Americans who got their heads cracked in, who got beaten and lynched and had dogs sicked on them. Still happens, where that right would not have been available to you. That privilege would not have been something that you would have been able to have taken advantage of. You would have wound up in Oxford if it wasn't for that. That's a historical fact. It's not.
I don't know what
and again,
government of America, white government of America had in mind in terms of immigration.
Right, and I don't know. And I think that's why that's important for us to have these conversations because it's about learning both ways. There's certain things that
I know Europeans migrated here.
Sure.
I know Arabs migrated here. Migration is migration. So I don't know.
Migration is migration. What he fails to understand is that none of these groups would be here without foundational Black Americans fighting for civil rights, fighting for immigration to a certain degree. That's the point he's missing. So he speaks on these things as if he does not know. I think he does know, right? Because he will say, oh, I don't know, I don't understand. Well, other people have come here. Immigration benefits countries. Immigrants benefit certain countries. Well, again, they were not even letting in Irish and Italians people until a lot of these civil rights came about in large droves. They used slavery as a basis of creating a lot of free labor in America that built America to be the most powerful empire in the world, let alone we have the most powerful military in the world. That's why we can go and kidnap Venezuelan presidents. That's why our president can speak tough and talk tough like we're going to take over Greenland, just to kind of give you guys some current examples, no less. But again, when I look at this guy right here is a professor, and he said that he's traveled all across the world, and he's been spewing propaganda at the highest level. And at every given point, any foundational Black American that comes involved with this guy, becomes on your platform, you need not only to poke holes in his arguments and his fallacies, but shotgun blast his ass to the face. And I mean that figuratively, okay? Literally, to a sense of intellectual talk, not actual violence and bullets, ladies and gentlemen, okay? I want to point that out because somebody may take that out of context, okay? Let me move to the next point here.
Exactly. It's a nice little code word. You know, for example, I know people that would call us swatches. I've known Italians that would call us spictic mulignans. There's a bunch of terms that come up, right? The thing that people don't understand when it comes to the tether word is it's not every single person who is Black who decides to become a naturalized citizen and take the oath. That is extreme ignorance. A tether is somebody that goes out of their way to disparage, disrespect, and not understand the heritage, the sacrifice, and the contributions of foundational Black Americans to the fact that they are here. You are tethering yourself because the average person, we had this conversation the last time I was here, the average person.
And by the way, our great brother here, he's talking to a tether, and he knows that.
Person can't tell an African from a Jamaican, from a Ghanaian, from a foundational because they don't have a basis. It's just like many Black folks don't know the difference between a Japanese, a Chinese, a Vietnamese, or Korean. They don't know. They just put us all in one boat. So when you come here, they're just like, you're Black. But our unique distinction is we did fight for the right for Franck to be able to come over here and sit in the classroom, to be a citizen with all of the rights that are imbued in us, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness by the U.S. Constitution. We fought for that uniquely, and that part is unique. Immigration is not unique. Having people come and become naturalized citizens is not unique.
I do want to touch on that because I think it's important, because the definition of tether, not all immigrants are tethered, but those who disparage FBA sacrifice are. Now, this tether conversation, I'm going to frame it in the most responsible manner that I can, because when people use labels like tether or Akata, it can easily become dehumanizing and reckless. But Dave's definition here is basically that a tether isn't every immigrant, which I agree. We don't, and I think majority of foundational Black Americans agree on this. It's someone who goes out of their way, which I believe Franck Zanu is. He just doing it at a different, he's doing it from a different perspective. He's doing it from a different a level, so to speak. But the tether isn't every immigrant. It's someone who goes out of their way to disrespect our lineage, our history, and our sacrifice, while benefiting from the civil rights climate that expanded across protections for non-white groups. And yes, to his point, civil rights gained reshaped American law and public, whether it be the accommodation in ways that affected many groups, and not only Black Americans, Asians as well, Hispanics as well, and even to a smaller degree, Irish and Italians. So yes, states use tools like poll taxes and grandfather clauses to block Black voting power after Reconstruction. So the real conversation shouldn't be who's Black enough. It should be, why do some people enter a house built from our bones and then start insulting the architects? That's what people are reacting to, Because again, this guy right here, if you notice, he acts dumb on some parts, but has much to say on some of the same tenets that Dave is actually making. That's why you know that he's very disingenuous, and he's doing this out of disrespect, as if we didn't fight and die. Our ancestors didn't fight and die for our position that we have today as foundational Black Americans. So again, do not be fooled, okay, in a wolf in sheep's clothing, that state that he's for the embetterment of Black people worldwide and that he's a professor, but still denigrating Black Americans. Oh, sometimes he talks about African culture and some of the ways Africans treat one another, but you're in America from Benin, Africa, speaking down on Black Americans and trying to do it very astute and intelligently, as if we're going to not see through this cloak and this cloak and shield that you're showing. He's just popping smoke, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this is Tether Bible.
But Black people and other people, other marginalized groups who are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, being able to take advantage of the same freedoms, the same benefits, the same laws that are inalienable God-given rights according to manifest destiny in the U.S. Constitution, is uniquely because of what we fought for. Therein lies the difference.
Do you agree with the term Akata being used in a way to disrespect or harm in a harmful way?
Oh, no. You know, so many things happen with that word, okay? Even some of us, if you use the same word in a Ghanaian, one of the Ghanaian languages, or one of the Nigerian languages, on and on and on. It was a movie with Wesley Snipes, I believe, that poisoned that word. Because when he said something in Yoruba language and the guy asked him, what did he mean? He translated to him and said,
A cotton picker. Yeah.
And then Wesley Snipes swung at him in that movie. I hated the whole thing.
Okay.
But if you go to any of the Western...
Now, the movie he's talking about is a Sugar Hill Gang clip when the African guy, they was going to do business together and then they backed out. Then it's going to call him an Akata. So what does Akata mean? Because even till this day, we've heard the terms of cotton picker, wild dog, because again, there's certain words you can use as a term of endearment, like the N-word, and then you can use it as a denigrating term. So to some Nigerians who speak Yoruba, right, the Yoruba language as he stated, it could be a term used in Nigeria as something positive or something innate, but then when used against a Black American, it'd be something denigrating. Again, this guy doesn't define. He doesn't contextualize anything. He just talks. He's very frustrating. I'm not upset. He's very frustrating, but I'm trying to point people out like him, because he's the ones, for some reason, the YouTube algorithm is promoting a lot of the videos and interviews that he's on, and other people are watching this as if Pan-Africanism through people like him would live. No, he will even tell you Pan-Africanism is dead. Okay, let me show you that clip very quickly. Let me show you that clip. I'm gonna speed it up just for copyright reasons here. Okay, let me speed this up. Give me 1 second here, family. Okay, right after this, let's look at this from this point right here.
Calm down, man. Just calm down. Okay, I'm sorry. Look, my brother was under the impression that you were going to do some business. Maybe we can just have a seat, have a drink, maybe sit down, have a nice little diatribe, see if we can work this out.
Well, don't take this personally, Romelo. It won't work. You do your thing, I do my thing. You know, it won't work. We can't work with Akata.
Akata. Where's this?
Now, I don't know if the guy is Jamaican, or maybe I'm not too familiar with the Yoruba language, because he sounded Caribbean. He could have sounded like he's from Trinidad and Tobago or Jamaica, because he said ting. I don't know if Nigerians speak like that. I'm gonna back it up just a little bit for context here, okay? And then we're gonna let it the rest of it play.
Where's this Akata shit? Akata.
You know, it won't work. We can't work with Akata.
Akata. Where's this Akata shit? Like American? Oh shit. Cotton picker.
So that was a clip that they're referring to in this tape right here.
Countries, especially Ghana,
in the Ewe language of Ghana, your name is Amayibo Yovo, the black white man.
The black white man.
Yes.
Why is that?
That's the name in the airways. That's what they called African Americans.
And is that
What do y'all call the Caribbeans then? Why do we have a specific term? What are the Caribbeans called?
You must understand that United States and Sub-Saharan Africa, things that happen, and the people who came and went, Maya Angelou, the 60s movement was never between Caribbeans and what is it called? Africa. It was between American blacks and Africa. So we came to see more of you. Now, the word gaijin. Does anybody here know the word gaijin?
No. Lord, here he goes with these examples of Japanese. So my family and I, we went to Japan last year. I've been to Japan. I was actually stationed in Japan. And gaijin means foreigner, but they can even use gaijin in a derogatory form as well. Okay. They can use gaijin in a derogatory form as well. And I think it's important here because he never really said what Akata means. He never defined Akata and what it means towards Black America. But then we have Africans, what seem to be Africans in the Sugar Hill movie, saying that it means Black American cotton picker, right? What is a denigrating term to a Black American? Because again, Wesley Snipes and I only remember the guy from the Five Heartbeats, Eddie Kane. Are not cotton pickers. We don't pick cotton anymore. The current people don't want to kick, but it's a denigrating term, no less. So again, this guy is being highly disrespectful at every term, but not defining, not explaining, not giving context. And he's a professor. He should be, what should he be? I think he should be a con artist because he's conning American people. Now, granted, he is a naturalized American citizen now, and he stated he never wants to go back to Benin or Beni. Again, this is not denigrating towards the Benin people, but this is one of your own here, guys. This is one out of the 54 countries in Africa from the very small country of Benin, representing Africa on a global stage, being an American citizen at the same time, benefited from the Civil Rights Movement, the 13th, the 14th, and 15th Amendment, and still being disrespectful at the highest level. This America's too damn free, in my opinion. And that's why you now see this wave of people online stating that Foundation Black Americans is like a hate group. Foundation Black Americans is a group instead of a lineage, right? And we're not a group. But and that a lot of us are now Trump supporters. No. Here's the thing about being a Foundation Black American. I'm only speaking about this Foundation Black American, me. I don't agree with probably 95, 99% of some of the things that President Trump is doing. But I do agree at getting rid of a lot of the illegal immigrants and decreasing the amount of mass immigration. Because mass immigration at a high level really pulls the legs out from the table of Black Americans achieving higher education attainment because of the amount of government subsidies that a lot of these immigrants receive. Even if we can get 1 to 2% more than what we're receiving now and stop all the mass immigration, we'll still be better off. Okay, not reparations. Okay, but still be better off than we once were. Then, when there's a vacuum because you have not allowed a lot of illegal immigrants from Africa, Caribbean, as well as Central America and Mexico, who are going to fill those jobs? Who's going to fill those industries? Well, there are some jobs that white people just don't want to do, where Foundation Black Americans have always done. We were the construction workers. You see, we were the plumbers. We were the electricians. So when we look at traditionally a lot of the trades that we used to have and how the system of white supremacy, by the way, and I know got a lot of you guys going to hate me for this, the Democratic Party have used these buffer groups with mass immigration and incentivizing illegal immigration, have boxed Foundational Black Americans out from a lot of these industries, especially construction. So now we look at Foundational Black Americans at a national level as if we don't have a lot of these trades, like we don't have a lot of these skills of being roofers and carpenters, and we were, and bricklayers, and we were. Now, I know a lot of people say, what about the Italians? What about the Chinese? And what about, yeah, they were there too, but we're not talking about them, okay? We're empowering ourselves because all these different groups, whether they come to America or have been in America, they always empower themselves and they always have government backing with government tax dollars. So again, this guy, I don't think he's even a wolf in sheep clothing. He's just a sheep. I don't know. I don't want to denigrate him too bad, but I hate people like this that come with open arms, but behind his back, he got a semi-automatic rifle. Because again, he's not standing on truth. He's standing on lies, propaganda, okay, deflection. And when he don't have a relevant response to what they're asking him or what they're stating, he said, oh, I don't know. I just know that migration, excuse me, I'm fighting a bug here too, guys. So if I'm off just a little, let me know when it comes to the mic. And sis, FBA empowerment, there's a, excuse me, through the YouTube, you can just do a super chat if you want to leave a donation. I appreciate that. Okay, let me go to my last clip here, guys. Let me go to my last clip, one of my last clips. Okay, just bear with me here. I need to find it. All right, here we go. Let's get right into it.
Like how we're thinking, like, let's connect, let's adapt to each other. When you get frowned upon, now this is why Black Americans, Foundation Black Americans, say, okay, I don't want to be a part of what African American stands for because I'm not African American. They clearly, okay, then that's where the conversation comes in.
Right
okay,
there.
but look, but then you go with, oh, so what is this Foundation of African? You guys was African American. Well, it's like, why would I want to be African American if I know that you guys?
Who is you guys African American?
Well, the people that look at African Americans as if you're not African American unless you know what tribe you're from, what else, unless you didn't read
I'm
the
not
book
African
about.
American.
No,
No, but what he's trying to, I got
Okay,
you. Okay. So you have to remember when it comes to their show, they have a lot of people throughout the diaspora, a lot of women who come up here and they will say things like, well, you guys don't know who you are. You guys don't understand where you are. You guys don't understand your culture because you don't even have a language. You can't tell me where you're from. And they're like, oh, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm from Philly. No. You from Africa, but you don't know what tribe. You don't know this, that, and the third. So you're not really African American. Y'all are lost. Y'all are lost people. Like, that is like you could just taking their show as a case study, you could pick any random episode and find somebody saying something along those lines.
Yes.
None of that does anything
I see.
for things.
Let me explain something. So the term African American is correct. It's Afro-Brazilians, Afro-Cubans, Afro-Americans. The Afro, you can make it African. I am not African American. Because I'm from Benin. Right. So I'm a Beninois American. Obama is Kenyan American.
Right.
America does not recognize that term. You see what I'm getting at, family? We allow people over here that don't learn U.S. anything, U.S. law, U.S. Constitution, Code of Conduct. They don't, the Bill of Rights, they don't learn anything. And they sure don't learn the U.S. Census Bureau records. So when you're naturalized as a Black person, you are considered a Black American or an African American. So you can put Benet on top of it all you want to, but that is not how America recognizes you. Just as well as no one says European American. He said, no, you guys are African Americans. So do you call white people in America European America? See, this is where, in my opinion, he goes wrong a lot of the times. Because he has no idea what the hell he's talking about. This entire debate is really about one thing. This is my opinion. Power. Frank is arguing from a framework of continuity, heritage, ethnic language, inherited identity. And Dave is arguing from forced ethnogenesis, survival under terror, nation building under exclusion and stolen representation through media. Both are describing real phenomena to a certain degree, but only one side can be weaponized into policy harm. Because when you say, as he stated, that's why he kind of blew up, FBA have no culture, the system hears then FBA has no claim. And that's the point where I'm making. Run that by me again slowly, because I really didn't hear what this tether is talking about. What are you really talking about? Because he got a lot of excuses.
You are African Americans, which means I can look at you and trace that you are from the continent, except that I can't trace which specific tribe. That's why we use the continent as a whole as a prefix to your current nationality.
So would you call somebody from Haitian,
Afro-Haitian.
Afro-Haitian, or Afro-Jamaican, or Afro-Trinidadian?
Now, very good point. You see, those who live in the Caribbean, they are homogeneous by skin color and they don't have any mix of people. So you just call them Jamaicans, Haitians. You don't say Afro. But Brazil is not originally all black Caribbean country. It was Portuguese, and then they took blacks there. So to differentiate, you say Afro-Brazilians. Yeah. So that is a difference.
But Brazil wasn't a white country. They had indigenous Amazonians there before Portuguese came and colonized Brazil and brought slaves from Africa there. Again, no context. This guy's just talking. How, again, if anybody's familiar with his work, he does have a level of intelligence, but it's skewed. Is he, I don't know, is he on the payroll?
Difference. Yeah. Okay. So if I look at you, I say, oh, wow, these are brothers and sisters who once could have belonged to. Now, I bet you, if the African Americans who came here had been able to trace their tribes, their country, you know, that kind of thing, oh, you wouldn't look at me and say, I'm a brother. No.
I'm telling you, without that information, I want to call you a brother.
Oh, no, I totally, I admire it.
Yeah.
I admire it because I know it's a very endearing word that African Americans use here to show that we are in a struggle together. Okay, I understand that.
We're unified to build together. So I think you're looking.
Okay, so that is what he was saying. Right. He said something was interesting, that I educate for a reason. I do.
Yeah.
I also uneducate. Meaning there are certain promises we are being given. It's just diverting us, and it's not going to happen. You're not going to have a Pan-Africanism. That is one. It is only for groups of people who are thinking that there's a reason they can't build South Africa. So now you're looking to join because misery loves company.
Oh, don't let Dr. Umar hear you say that.
So no, I don't believe in Pan-Africanism. It was created after, Kwame Nkrumah made it popular, you know, but even though it was created a long time ago, Kwame Nkrumah, and why was it created here? It makes sense. Because when you are in captivity outside, you long for the people there. You know, you remember the song By the Rivers of Babylon. Here we sat and we remembered Zion, even they don't know. So you are remembering Zion. So it's fine for you to have.
It will either be Zion or Wakanda. I don't think foundational Black Americans, I don't know if you guys have been to Africa, okay? This is not to denigrate the entire African continent of 54 countries. I can only really speak on the countries that I've been to. Now, even Nigerians flee Nigeria to go to Ghana because there was a lot of Nigerians in Ghana. And even Ghanaians didn't want Nigerians there, not to denigrate Nigerians in any sense of the word, but even in Ghana, there's a high level of poverty. You can be on a paved road driving and then hit a dirt road, then back to a paved road. As a foundational Black American, we're just not used to that. Either you're on an old country dirt road somewhere out in the outback or the country somewhere, and it's all just dirt. But majority of American roads are paved. We're just not used to that. We're used to an infrastructure of electricity. They have power outages all over the African continent, even in South Africa, where, you know, the Netherlands, people from the Netherlands, the Dutch colonized. They have these blackouts. We had blackouts when we visited South Africa a couple of years ago. So again, when we look at a lot of these African countries, and not by the way of their own selves, by colonization, and that's why if you guys have been here for the entire video, he said, when the Japanese colonized the Koreans for 50 years, and when the Japanese left, what did they lose? He said the Korean guy said we only lost time. I stated when a lot of these colonial European countries went to Africa and colonized African countries by the way of the Berlin Conference, how they chopped up. That's why certain African countries, they speak French. While other African countries, they speak Portuguese, while other African countries speak English, right? Because of the Berlin Conference and dividing them because of their resources and their manpower, so to speak. Why? What did Africans lose, in my opinion? Not speaking for all FBA. They lost their minds because these are some of the same people, the tether culture of the Africans that come over here as if they are better, and they're using the same white supremacist talking points that all these other buffer groups come over. The tether class of the Asians, the tether class of the Hispanics, the tether class of the Irish and the Italians, so on and so forth. But I think it's more harmful when you have people who can cosplay, who can blend in because they skin in with some of your same phenotype and some of the same skin color. That's why it seems as though that it's more derogatory, because it is. Because again, if the person speaks, regular English or Black American English without any sort of Caribbean or African, accent, that white person, that Hispanic person, that Asian person thinking about, why is he talking about his own people like that? We're not our own people.
That need to say, look, if I can only connect with my people. But I am realistic that unless you and I, one-on-one, we decide on how we want to relate, there is nothing common and natural that is going to make me and you ever understand each other easily as an African American and I. Impossible.
Well, do you think that we're intentionally divided? Intentionally divided? Black people?
No. Which one?
Africa from African Americans?
No. It's just natural because we don't.
Boy, the tether lies here are strong. Now, again, I'm no Pan-Africanist, but yes, this was by design for us to ward against and hate one another. Just as well as in Africa, I was told by a couple of Nigerian buddies that a lot of times they will only show denigrating films about Black Americans being gangsters and mobsters, homeless, and pregnant, and not having a father in the home. They only show films that adhere to those stereotypes. Okay. Then in America, the only sort of films we saw is that Africans sitting there with, half garments on, with flies around their lip, or hungry or starving, or some sort of we thinking they're still living in ancient times, running around, Shaka Zulu, throwing spears and stuff like that. So again, why is he lying? This guy has to be on somebody's payroll, because for him to be this world-renowned professor that's going to all these different countries and living in and being sponsored, okay, that's the one thing that you guys didn't know. He was sponsored and on a scholarship to America, like $140,000. Now, I don't know if he actually received that cash, but whatever he learned over here, whatever his cause over here, that's the amount that was funded, so to speak, okay? It was over $100,000. Maybe he's from Greenland. Never mind, maybe somewhere else. But anyway, this is the point that I'm making here, fam, because again, he says no, and we know that to be false. Now, first, I'm gonna give a shout out to our good sister, FBA Empowerment. She says, thank you, brother, for all you do for our culture and lineage. It's very needed to debunk all the lies told about us and the downplaying of our greatness. Absolutely. Thank you for your donation, sister. I do appreciate it. Okay. Let me let this tether finish.
We have anything in common, man. You're not intentionally divided. What do you mean? You were intentionally separated by being taken away from the continent.
Let me tell you something. Now, again, white people all across Europe, even in America, they don't really have nothing in common. Well, they have a couple things in common. They have cheese, bread, and potatoes in common, and maybe some mayo. But the one thing that they have in common is domination. The one thing they have in common is power. The one thing they have in common is money, economics. So again, that's the problem I see here. Even if we don't like the same foods, these brothers are saying, well, don't you think that this was devised this way? That this was sought out to divide people? Because here's the thing that we all know. if Pan-Africanism was a real thing, and we use the intelligence of foundational Black Americans, okay, and the lessons that we've learned here in America, and if we can make a partnership with African countries, with the so-called African diaspora, don't you think that not only Africans as well as foundational Black Americans will be more powerful and richer than we are today? I want you guys to really think about that. But because, as I stated back to the story he gave about Koreans just losing time that they were being colonized by the Japanese, I stated that a lot of Africans lost their minds through colonization because they now have a colonized mindset, because they, especially there in Nigeria, right? And not to speak denigrating Nigeria, but this one reference points I'm making. They created the tallest Jesus statue in Nigeria, and is a depiction of a white Jesus. I think that says enough for me.
Now, you are asking for a unity with Africans on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
We have huge problems of our own.
Mm-hmm.
Curable diseases we can cure. Okay? All right. Inside the United States,
Yeah.
the African Americans themselves
Make a point right there. He did make a point right there, because they killed Gaddafi, who was trying to have a unified Africa. They have been trying to kill Julius Malema, okay, you know, EEF, head of the EEF down there in South Africa, because he wants a United States of Africa as well, because he understands that the sub-Saharan groups of Africa, if united with the amount of resources that they have, will be one of the powerful countries in the world. But a lot of the African leaders don't want to unify. So, you know, they don't want to unify with people on the same continent. Why in the hell would they want to unify with us over here, where they made disparaging terms as, oh, they're black white people, they're Yankees, they're this, they're that, they're Akata, they're Jarias, they're Beebs, they're all these different denigrating things. So if they don't want to unify on the continent, if they want to unify in their own countries where they have all this tribalism, where it be this tribe, the Igbo tribe, the Yoruba tribe, I'm just using Nigeria as an example because this is all throughout the different African countries, all the tribalism, if they want to unify on a country level, they don't want to unify on a country-to-country level, if they don't want to unify on a tribal level, if they don't want to unify on an international level, then we already know Pan-Africanism has been dead for a very long time. I think it was it Kwame Nkrumah who came up with the, you know, the whole Pan-Africanism. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Kwame Nkrumah who came up with that. Probably great intentions, but again, this have never been a partnership between foundational Black Americans and Africa. Even though we have a lot of Black Americans, oh, I'm an African American, I don't care about no goddamn foundational Black American. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just a term. It's just a labeling. It's just to represent a lineage. There's nothing derogatory about it. Okay. When I showed my genealogy on one of my last videos, I had an admixture of people from Mali and Benin, Togo, Nigeria, Native American here in the Americas. I had Scottish, Wales, Great Britain. That's why, again, when we describe the term ethnogenesis, we're very different than any other group. We have an admixture. That's why our noses are the way our noses, instead of flat or raised up like this. That's why our noses are the way it is. That's why we have long side cheekbones, where there may be higher cheekbones and a different cranium than a lot of bone structures from traditional or continental Africans. So again, there is a difference, and we need to make that distinction. So again, you could try to attach yourself to the motherland, but believe me, at one point in time, I said, you know what, babe? If we save up, you know, $250,000, right? We'd be 55 years of age. We can go over to Africa and live a great life. So we said, as we travel the world, because this is one of my world dreams, to travel the world. I've been to over 40 countries so far. I'm still continuing. I'm going to another country here pretty soon. Okay, I'll let you guys know. I never like to reveal my location. I want to track my ass down. But anyway, I'll tell you when I get back. but other than that, that's my dream of traveling the country and giving you guys relevance to it, because one thing I understand is that there's no partnership between Black people throughout the diaspora. Foundational Black Americans, we're a very unique group. We've been through a unique transformation in ethnogenesis that a lot of other people don't even stand, even though he's a worldwide scholar that's supposed to know this, that, and the other, which, in my opinion, he's probably one of the dumbest people to be on a podcast and speak. That's just my point of view, okay? Not saying that you differ. But again, there's a lot of African Americans that who are foundational Black Americans that don't want to adhere to that term. That's perfectly fine. But just understand the so-called Pan-Africanism, not only is it dead, it's been buried a long time ago.
Don't get along. Yes. Crime and killings in Chicago, Baltimore, LA, Detroit, you name it, in Bridgeport. You know, I'm the gun violence director for my city.
Yep.
So you go to New Haven, Hartford, Waterbury, and Bridgeport, and we don't shoot Asians and white, we shoot each other.
I guess we're shooting each other the same way that Africans shoot each other in the continent. The same way they have tribal wars in Nigeria, the same way they have tribal wars in Benin, the same wars that they have in Sudan. All across the continent, you have tribalism and you have genocide based upon someone's tribe, based upon where somebody derived from or where somebody, what country they come from. So again, he's only explaining what has occurred in Africa. But again, he never states why. See, there's systematic pressures that foundational Black Americans have went through and the limited of resources, right? When people say food desert really doesn't mean there's no food or grocery stores in the Black neighborhoods. This means there's no healthy or an abundance of healthy food in those areas. So again, for him to be so intelligent, or what they paint him as, not this podcast, but generally painting him as, there's no context. There's really no defining terms he's using in order to explain why he thinks the way he thinks. Is as if he's speaking at, he's using intelligent construction of his phrasing, but again, not defining anything. I don't know any professor who states things that don't define what they're stating and why they're saying the things that they're saying. Maybe I'm confused about it.
Now, when are you going to even fix that to unite in the United States of America first and say, now we can look towards the continent when we are divided over there? We can't. There's better chance you guys can unite here than we can ever dream. No, don't.
He just basically said that Africa is doomed. He said they will never unite in Africa. So Julius Malema's efforts is going to die with him. That's what he's stating right here, ladies and gentlemen. And if you guys new to Blacklogic, please hit that thumbs up button as well as subscribe button. Again, I don't do too many reactions because I don't like really, benefiting or, from somebody else's work. But this was a very powerful interview. And by the way, would I like to interview him? I don't think so. I don't think it would be fruitful for my audience to hear someone babble for an hour, 2 hours. I don't think it's beneficial. But no less, here's the question I want to leave with you. If FBA has no culture, then why has the world spent 120 years copying it? And if that's not true, why do you call the thing everybody steals, but nobody wants to pay for it? See, this whole Pan-African unity thing being used as healing or as a political distraction because somebody is profiting off the confusion, and it's usually not us. That's why we are delineating. We're on the delineation movement. And delineation doesn't mean hating any other group. It doesn't mean hating whites, Hispanics, Asians, continental Africans, Caribbeans. Like, no, we really need to deal with our empowerment. There's a lot of things in the Foundation Black American that we need to make better, that we need to fix. But we can't keep dividing our power. I saw a video clip where a guy's in Venezuela, a Black guy, speaking up for Venezuelans, and they started calling him the N-word, talking about this is not for you. This is not for you. You need to leave. They told him to leave. This is where we had the new Black Panther Party, and I'm going to release a video here in the next couple of days or so explaining that whole ordeal about one of the leaders of the new Black Panther Party out there protesting for illegal immigrants. And then I'm going to show a contradiction of two video clips. One, he says, well, we're not like the Black Panther Party of old. Then in another clip, we're like the ordinary Black Panther Party. So again, you can't speak curses and blessings out of the same mouth. That's the devil. You guys have a great and wonderful day. And by the way, I already did my Dr. Martin Luther King, one of our great master teachers, special on his actual birthday, January 15th, instead of this government ran holiday here on January 19th. You guys have a great, wonderful day. Be one.